JC, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Absolutely. Well, JC, you're one of the few optometry-related executives that we're speaking to in this series about avoidable blindness. So I'm quite excited to speak to you today about this issue. I guess first off, just to talk about a little bit of a trend that I've been noticing worldwide. We know that a myopia epidemic is upon us now in certain parts of the world, and it seems like it's going to take the entire eye care community, from ophthalmologists to optometrists, to address that. But historically, it hasn't always been an easy cooperation. So what do you think is the future of this kind of collaboration moving forward?
I totally agree, Matt. It does require a multi-dimensional approach to it, and I would go beyond optometry and ophthalmology. I would add other healthcare professionals such as pediatricians, school nurses, family practitioners. Depending on where you are in the world, definitely different healthcare professionals would need to be involved to address this growing epidemic of myopia, which apparently has gotten even worse as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, where we're spending more time indoors. Kids are spending more and more time in front of screens like I am right now. So anecdotally, we've seen apparently a much higher prevalence of pediatric myopia. So but you're right, we do need to work together, Matt.
Well, this series in large part is about avoidable blindness, and most familiar to me would be cataracts worldwide, and eliminating the backlog there. But clearly blindness happens in different shapes and forms, and myopia is not something that I would typically consider for that, but certainly it still could be a serious condition, whether it's for myopic reasons itself or for risk factors that are involved. So could you tell me a little bit about the significance of myopia as a condition in, let's just say, eliminating visual problems from our world?
Yes, I think we have to look at myopia from two different perspectives and somewhat linked to the developed world and to the developing world. In the developed world, one can conclude that most myopes are corrected. They have some form of optical correction that allows them to achieve good vision, 20/20, 6/6. And that in itself is not an issue. The issue is if the onset of myopia is at a very young age and it is allowed to progress. High levels of myopia are definitely linked to retinal disease, cataract, glaucoma, maculopathy. So these are conditions that untreated could lead to blindness. And so that's an issue that we're very concerned with. And again, I want to emphasize that in the developed world, that is where we see most of our concerns. In the developing world, we focus more on uncorrected refractive errors. That is, myopia or astigmatism or presbyopia that for multiple reasons is not corrected, and the individual who has one of these conditions has a visual disability not allowing him or her to function properly, to receive the proper education, to get the proper job. And that in itself leads to a vicious cycle of poverty. So when we look at myopia or uncorrected refractive errors, the approach must be or should be somewhat different in the developing world as compared to the developed world. In the developed world, we are very concerned about the increase in the prevalence of myopia, but not only in the prevalence, also in the severity. We know that the risk of those pathologies that I mentioned before is significantly higher as the refractive error is higher. So in corrections above 4 diopters, definitely we're starting to get very, very concerned about the potential long-term risks as that child grows, becomes an adolescent, and then an adult. The risk is there.
Well, it's striking because, I interview a lot of refractive surgeons, and, with things like, for example, LASIK, they're often just trying to get, if they're within, say, 0.5 diopters, nowadays that can be good, but also might not be good depending on the patient expectations. But that's a very small difference, isn't it, between, say, plano and 0.5 plus or minus. But now you're talking about a condition where it could be many diopters for children that you're essentially concerned about and you're trying to correct. So it does strike me that the community optometrists, ophthalmologists do need to come together to address this concerning condition where lots of dioptric power is involved that could cause lots of different conditions over time, correct?
That is correct. And actually, you mentioned refractive surgery, LASIK specifically. Obviously, for a surgeon, performing LASIK on a -3 eye is a lot different than on a -8 eye. The corneal thickness, is much thinner in a high myope, creating in itself greater challenges, leading to potential lack of success in a LASIK procedure. So even ophthalmologists that practice refractive surgery highly appreciate lower myopes than higher myopes as candidates for these procedures.
And is that an example of how, if a patient is, for example, co-managed from when they're a youngster through older age, that you could address issues of maybe high myopia as a child, and then you follow them along that journey, and then the ophthalmologist can come in at 30, 35, do the refractive surgery, and then the cataract surgeon down the line with maybe a multifocal IOL.
Again, that's where it becomes a multidisciplinary, lifelong management of the patient. And again, it varies from country to country. The practice of eye care is not the same around the world. We know that quite well. But in those countries where the professions are clearly identified, optometry and ophthalmology, and although the scope of practice might differ from country to country, the co-management of these patients over their entire life becomes of paramount importance.
How do you drive that, by the way? Because you mentioned there is difference in, culture in different countries. Is it just simply a matter of education to try to get more collaboration, country by country, essentially?
It is. It's education. It's awareness, and it's educating eye care practitioners, where one would believe that should be fairly easy. That's not necessarily the case, although progress has been made. There are organizations today representing both optometry and ophthalmology where we are working together. As an example, under the umbrella of the International Agency for the Prevention of Blindness, where now the IAPB does consider myopia an issue, something that needs to be dealt with. And just a few years ago, the IAPB had not even recognized refractive errors as a serious ocular condition. So progress has been made over the past 10 years. But also we need to educate the consumer, the parents of these children, the teachers of these children, other healthcare professionals. I mentioned pediatricians or school nurses. They also need to be aware of the fact that a 8-year-old child that is already myopic needs to be referred. We just cannot say, hey, don't worry, this is normal. We'll just correct him or her with spectacles and everything else continues as normal. That is not the case. So conveying that message to the broader community is something that the eye care industry is now focusing on. Just about 3 years ago, we formed what is known as the Global Myopia Awareness Coalition, GMAC. GMAC focuses on precisely developing materials, educational materials aimed at the end consumer to bring awareness about what myopia is. Many people don't know what it is and what needs to be being done about it with children. And GMAC is formed, is sponsored by 15 organizations, 15 companies that represent the contact lens industry, the spectacle lens industry, the pharmaceutical industry, and the instrumentation industry. And we have the support of the International Agency for the Prevention of Blindness and the World Council of Optometry, also involved in supporting the activities of the Global Myopia Awareness Coalition. We've started first in the US, but we will be extending our reach outside of the US, hopefully as of next year.
Well, that's fantastic, JC. And are there any initiatives or anything that you'd like to mention insofar as any devices or other initiatives going on at CooperVision in relation to this issue today about avoidable blindness?
Yeah, Matt, obviously CooperVision is a large, contact lens company. We are the pioneers precisely in optical intervention for myopia control, for myopia management, both in the areas of soft contact lenses. MySight, a daily disposable contact lens, is the first and only soft contact lens to be approved by the FDA with the indication that it slows down the progression of myopia in children between 8 and 12 years of age. So that is a major breakthrough. So definitely at CooperVision, we are completely committed to myopia management. But I do want to mention that it's not just what we're doing in developing products for the developed world. We also have initiatives for the developing countries where the human resource is not available to diagnose these conditions, not just myopia, but any refractive error. That's why CooperVision is a global sponsor of Optometry Giving Sight, which is a fundraising organization based in the US. We raise funds and we support long-term sustainable initiatives aimed at developing, at sponsoring the establishment of optometry schools in countries around the world where they don't exist. We also sponsor vision clinics in developing countries where there is an immediate need to provide primary eye care to the needed population. So at CooperVision, we look at not just the commercial benefits, if you will, of being the global leader in myopia management, but we also understand that there's an unmet need in the developing world where we need to put significant resources into.
JC, thank you for joining the program and telling us a little bit about your worldview of avoidable blindness through the path of myopia correction.
My pleasure, Matt. Thank you for the opportunity, and good luck with everything you're doing.
Well, thank you again, and it's been a pleasure.